Welcome to the Alaska Weather Show. I'm meteorologist Peter Chan, coming to you from the National Weather Service on this Saturday, February 12th, in partnership with Alaska Public Media. And if you'd like additional weather information, you can always go to weather.gov/Alaska. I got to jump into it tonight. It's just a short public segment, but nevertheless, we're going to continue to see a series of North Pacific low pressure systems come on up into the Bering and occasionally Gulf, and it's going to provide some active weather at times, along with some enhanced precipitation. We do expect some above normal precipitation, especially across the southern half of the state here over the next week or two. We also have the possibility where skies are clear of enhanced aurora activity. Look for the northern lights here over the weekend through February. If skies are clear, the best chance of that happening, have clear skies, will be the northern half of the state. Thanks to high pressure there along the north slope, coldest temperatures will reside along the north slope Brooks Range this weekend into early next week. But we do anticipate milder temperatures and above normal precipitation, especially across the southern third of the state from the southwest into the panhandle. And looking at current advisories, there are some winter weather advisories for areas of the west, including much of the Seward Peninsula and St. Lawrence Island, extending into the eastern interior around Fort Yukon, Yukon Flats, and the east arm of the Alaska Range. No heavy snow, but some light snowfall, an inch or two is likely overnight into Sunday. And then off toward the south and west, St. Paul, there the Pribilof Islands will be under a winter weather advisory for Sunday evening into Monday morning for some winds and accumulating snow, and that frontal system will be pushing into the southwest coast, including Bristol Bay, as we head through early next week, later Sunday night into early next week. Well, quick check here of a couple of sky cams. We have Ruby there, kind of up toward the middle part of the Yukon River. Cloudy with a little light snow and fog. Temperature is a little below zero, 3 below this afternoon. Port Huyton, though, in the southwest peninsula there, mostly cloudy with a temperature of 36, and there will be some temperatures there. Along the Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island, it will be up in the 40s, as well as some areas of especially the southern and outer coast of the Panhandle. Satellite imagery does show, though, there is the next little area of low pressure down there. If you see south of Kodiak Island lifting out of the North Pacific, that is going to turn more eastward and just clip the south end of the Panhandle as we go through Sunday night into Monday. Meanwhile, off to the north, we have high pressure in place from eastern Russia across the north slope into the Canadian Arctic coast, and then the next stronger low will be coming on up further southwest from the North Pacific, approaching the central Aleutians. The weather map this afternoon has kind of a trough with a few weaker low pressure systems from the Canadian interior across the southwest coast, the lower Kuskokwim Delta, and then back out just north of the western Aleutians there in the Bering. And that other low there well south of Kodiak Island and the peninsula, Alaska Peninsula, will begin moving northeastward and approaching Haida Gwaii as we get into later Sunday and Monday. There's high pressure across the Arctic coast there, and then trough that kind of weakens where we have some areas of light snow continuing, especially along between, say, the Yukon River and the Alaska Range, and that will tend to continue into Sunday along the Alaska Range. But we expect that snow to diminish. More importantly, we see the one low there just west-southwest of Haida Gwaii with a little light rain. And then back out toward the west, the stronger low, a 945 low, southwest there of the central Aleutians. Now tonight, Saturday night into Sunday morning, there could also be some areas of fog develop in the central and northern panhandle where there are some breaks in the cloud cover that develop given all the moisture, recent precipitation and the cooler temperatures. But by Monday, the low lifts further off toward the north of the frontal boundary, pressing north of the Aleutians and pressing northward through the Alaska Peninsula up to around Bristol Bay. And we expect snow out ahead of the system. It's ahead of with the warmer air that's going to be pushing up into the southern part of the state here as we go into next week. Lows are going to be above freezing over the lower portions of the Panhandle. Otherwise, it's still below freezing for much of the south central areas, but the readings by Sunday afternoon will be getting up around freezing as far north as maybe Anchorage and certainly Cordova. But above freezing, some 40s there from Craig and Sitka through Ketchikan. And then Monday morning temperatures will be creeping up and probably stay just above freezing from Kodiak Island south and westward, as well as across the southern half of the Panhandle. And then finally by Monday, 43 there at Kodiak, and certainly we could see temperatures up around freezing as far north as Anchorage with some additional snowfall. Cold readings there across the Brooks Range and along the Arctic coast north slope with lows 30s and some 40s below. We'll see daytime temperatures remain below zero there in the north, along and north of the Yukon River. And then again, cold temperatures Monday morning, temperatures 30s with some isolated 40-degree below readings certainly possible there across much of the north, including cold temperatures there in the Seward Peninsula. And then Monday's highs remain below zero along and north of the Yukon River. In through the southwest, we have temperatures that'll begin to creep upward. Coldest readings are there through the lower Yukon Delta, but temperatures are going to be near freezing along the Alaska Peninsula into the Aleutians, with temperatures in the lower 40s there, especially the eastern half of the Aleutians, including Dutch Harbor. And then as we go through Monday morning, temperatures will creep upward as that warmer air presses north as the front lifts northward, spreading snow into the southwest interior. So temperatures will be moderating along the southwest coast, Bristol Bay, and lower Kuskokwim Delta by Monday afternoon, with many temperatures 40 plus the Alaska Peninsula into the Aleutians. Here's the 6 to 10 day temperature outlook, February 18th through the 22nd. Above normal temperatures are expected around Cook Inlet eastward into the Panhandle. Below normal temperatures, especially in the west central and northwest. And as a result, with these low pressures coming in up out of the North Pacific, we do expect that moisture to really concentrate around the Alaska range and in through the interior, especially the southern half. So we expect above normal precipitation in this time frame. But initially this coming week, we will see some milder temperatures across southwest Alaska that will translate eastward along the northern Gulf Coast and south central interior. So at least we're going to get a break from some colder weather, but it may include some additional bouts of snow and even some rain there along the warmer coastal areas.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Well, moving along now to your flight weather. If you do have a flight planned Sunday into Monday, we're going to see an area of IFR conditions up along the Yukon Valley, especially west and north of the Alaska Range. Some moisture that has worked its way in through the interior, creating some light precipitation, but lower ceilings and some visibilities at times. Also, just overall, we're going to see a pattern of progressive Pacific storms that are going to impact the lower Bering into the southwest, south central, southeast portions of the state over the next couple of weeks, and that's going to mean some milder air and moisture that's going to try and push northward. As we go into Sunday afternoon, still some IFR there across the interior as well as along the Arctic coast. And also a little pocket coming up into the southern part of the Panhandle in connection with a weaker low working its way through the lower Gulf west of Haida Gwaii, and then a frontal band, a frontal system that'll be lifting northeastward across the Aleutians and eventually Alaska Peninsula and southwest coast here as we begin to early next week. We will see IFR conditions expanding there out toward the southwest. And as we get into Monday afternoon, we see a broad area of IFR conditions from the central Gulf across Kodiak Island, mouth of Cook Inlet, through the southwest Bristol Bay, out over the central Bering and back down into even the central Aleutians. Past conditions on Sunday, Anaktuvik will see MVFR conditions become VFR, though the further south you go toward the Yukon River, you're going to run into IFR conditions. Same thing, Adigan Pass, MVFR becoming VFR, but if you're flying further south of Adigan Pass, expect IFR conditions. Lake Clark should generally hold on to MVFR conditions on Sunday, and Merrill remain IFR. As we round up through the central Alaska Range, Rainy Pass, MVFR becoming IFR, and Windy Pass will generally hold on to IFR conditions during the day on Sunday. And as we go further east, Isabel, IFR becoming MVFR. And then on the east end of the Alaska Range, Mentasta, VFR becoming MVFR. And as we drop a little further south and west toward Tanita, expect IFR conditions mid-pass on out through the west entrance to hold on Sunday. The east side, east entrance there, MVFR conditions. And similarly, just a little reverse, Portage Pass will see MVFR conditions on the west entrance, IFR conditions along the east entrance, especially early in the day, but that should give way to MVFR conditions in the afternoon. And then Chilkoot and White We'll see MVFR conditions become VFR, so at least there in the northern panhandle we expect conditions to be improving. Freezing levels Sunday morning are bumped up a bit through the central lower Gulf from 2,000 to 4,000 feet to 6,000 feet, cutting across Haisley into British Columbia with the surface freezing line along the southwest panhandle coast to just off the Kenai and Kodiak Island, and then dropping back down and crossing the far eastern Aleutians in the vicinity of Dutch Harbor. Greatest threat of icing will be associated with weak low pressure out in the lower Gulf between 4,000 and 12,000 feet, and then another area out in the west of the central and western Aleutians between 2,000 and 10,000 feet with that frontal system that'll be lifting northward. And then generally interior areas, south central coast, between 2,000 and 10,000 feet. Upper level jet stream winds at 30,000 feet are strongest from the northwest across the southwest part of the state, upwards to 130 knots crossing the Kenai Peninsula, and also a jet core of 165 knots approaching there the eastern portion of the Aleutians, and that's from the southwest. At mid-levels, 9,000 feet, we have a weak low-pressure circulation just west there of Haida in the lower southeast Gulf. 40-knot winds across Cook Inlet there from the west-northwest, and then a broader area of stronger mid-level winds between 40 and near 60 knots moving up into the central and eastern Aleutians. And we can see that out over the Aleutians, that's where the greatest winds are, 3,000 feet, between 50 and 70 knots as that frontal system in a counterclockwise circulation lifts northward. Much of the mainland, though, into northwest Canada, winds are going to be on the light side. And if we look at the potential for turbulence, maybe an isolated patch there upper Tanana Valley, east side of the Alaska Range, surface to 6,000 feet. But the greatest area or threat for any isolated severe turbulence is associated with an occluded front that will be lifting northward across the central Aleutians on Sunday. We expect at least there surface to 4,000 feet, and some of the winds just aloft at 3,000 feet are going to be in the vicinity of 60 knots as that system lifts northward. So keep that in mind. As I mentioned, we're going to see a series of Pacific systems. Another one coming on in through the southwest, the Aleutians up to the Alaska Peninsula and southwest coast Tuesday into Wednesday, and then maybe another system there by later next weekend. So if you have a flight plan, check the latest conditions and forecast, and have a safe one.
We can't just put the fires out because we can't put them out. We've tried that now for a century, and it doesn't work. It just makes the next one worse.
You may see a place like this and think, total devastation. And it's not your fault for thinking that.
But that depiction is, as we've learned from countless experts over the last 2 weeks, not the whole story, and not how you should think about wildfires.
The truth is, there are lots of types of habitats out west, and fire affects them all in unique ways. So it's important to start thinking about the big picture with wildland fires. So let's first rewind. To help us understand what's going on out west, Rob and I started calling up the experts, and what we found was that the story of fire, particularly in the west, is complex. So to understand it, we planned a road trip.
Road trip time!
The goal of our road trip was to see as many forests as we could and meet experts around the region to help us understand the role fire plays out here. First destination was to find the forest burned by the now famous Great Fires of 1910. And at the heart of what is known as the Big Blow-Up, the logical first place to stop, the city of Wallace.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi. Good. Haley and I are in this cute town of Wallace, Idaho, which was completely destroyed by the 1910 fires. You can see how much damage this fire actually did. Let's send up the drone and see what the surroundings look like now. What we found was a small town surrounded by a dense forest, with every single tree just over 100 years old.
So everything we see behind us now, that's all new growth since 1910.
And to help us put these historic fires and the forests around Wallace in perspective, we met up with historian Diane Smith.
This is Wallace, and here are your fires.
All of this is the 1910 fires.
This is not that unusual. The fact is, it just was at a time in our development as a country. We noticed it, we paid attention to it, and we got the national attention for it.
Right. As it turns out, these fires helped reinforce the idea at the time that every fire needed to be suppressed at all costs. And this suppression for so long has led to new problems, namely thick forests full of fuel. But don't just take my word for it. Let me show you the difference. Notice how different this place is than this one that has been thinned out quite heavily in the past, or like an area like this that's been burnt quite frequently. In fact, both of these areas show how many forests would have looked in the past under regular burns. The dead and low-growing material gets consumed easily by fire, very much unlike this forest, which has had fire suppression for over 100 years and could lead to a high-intensity fire.
And all of this dry, dead material, that's problematic.
So we went looking for a big fire and just followed the smoke. Oh gosh, a huge crown fire. I gotta get this. These high-intensity fires aren't great because in many forests they kill all the trees over a large area, even in forests that used to be very resistant to frequent fires. And nobody knows that better than the people that work in this particular forest.
There's green coming back, and I guess I've gotten somewhat used to it, and I still have hope that the entire Sierra Nevadas won't look like this, that we can maybe get ahead of it. So the fires nowadays can move from the surface right into the tree canopies really easily, where in the past, fires would have kept trees pruned, they would have kept fuel densities low, and so now you end up with a lot more high severity fires in the West than had a fire regime kept under its historic recurrence. This to me is more a lesson of fire exclusion and keeping fire out of the system. If we're keeping it out of when it would burn with a beneficial effect, it will burn, and the probability of it burning at an unbeneficial state is higher.
So again, this is where it's complicated. We thought if only we could stop the fires, we'd win the fight. But the fires like the King Fire here show that stopping the fires only made it worse. Add that to the fact that we're living closer than ever to these wild lands. So to help us understand the wildland-urban interface, we met up with CAL FIRE. And as we were pulling up to this neighborhood, one of the residents quickly came out to tell us about the latest fire.
Yeah, our biggest fear is fire. It was very scary. I mean, everybody was honking and get out, and you know, there's a fire.
This is the risk across California. The response piece alone isn't going to solve this challenge if the homeowners aren't organized.
Because we're all in the same boat. One match away from everybody losing everything. It's a real fear.
Literally, we could have that fire spread up in here within a matter of seconds.
Wow.
California is going to have fires. We're not going to stop all the fires in California, so we have to have an infrastructure that's fire resistant. We need to work on policies that help us engage in active management of our forest. That's using prescribed fire as a tool. It's all the things in the toolbox. It's a combination of managing our forest and a combination of protecting our communities that are in them.
If it wasn't complicated enough, this made it very clear that you can't just let the fires burn whenever they start. The forests need to be managed to help mitigate the risk to us. But using fire seems to be one of the keys to making things safer, and knowing the science behind fire is always key to implementing good management. Fire Sciences Lab, right over here. So we made a stop at the Missoula Fire Lab to try to understand what we know about fire.
What? You see the flames at the very top and how they're sticking to the slope?
They really are. Everybody's laying down.
They're laying down. Well, that's flame attachment. Actually a very difficult thing to understand.
Here at the Fire Lab, the scientists study the basics of fire. Understanding the complexities here helps firefighters and forest managers in the field better predict and fight wildland fires.
Fires are inevitable. The only choices that we really have is what kind of fire to have and when do we want it. And that's it. Almost? Ready. You're ready. Jason's ready.
Mark's team is prepping to light a huge bed of precisely cut cardboard.
You're not going to be in any danger. So when the lights go out, don't move. Gasoline.
This is one of many experiments they'll run to understand the physics of fire, how it moves, how it spreads, and all of this measured by precise scientific instruments and high-speed cameras. Tens of thousands of pieces of cardboard up in flames in mere seconds. The ongoing research will help us better understand fire with the ultimate goal that we can live better with it. But can we do that? There is one forest we knew of that seems to have figured out this coexistence with fire, a place where fires burn all summer, every summer. It's part of their way of life and a mentality we wanted to know about. And here we went out with our guides Frank Lake and Steve Valentine, who work with the local U.S. Forest Service and tribe to help keep a healthy forest.
This is perfect. The fires basically come through and cleared out the understory, and all that's left are the trees.
Yeah, it's black and it's charred, and you just see a few of the earliest sprouts, but you come back in here a year, it's going to be alive again.
And to many, this may seem destroyed, but they view it differently here.
That fire's medicine, because it's not if it comes, it's when it comes. We need fire, and fire needs us.
You see, fire needs people to remind us how important fire is to the ecosystem. Frank and Steve's ancestors have been burning this forest for millennia. It's now part of what makes the forest special. They just want to make sure that it's not forgotten.
Basically, what you leave behind is what's important.
When they say this is your foods and your medicines, your sacred places, your springs, your water, that's essential, that's who we are as people. We have to learn to live with fire. We have to learn to respect fire. We have to maintain that security. That's why I do what I do.
Haisley and I have learned a lot on our journey. We've learned that fire is complicated, and it's not as black and white as we make it out to be, and it is an integral part of our forests. They've had fire running through them for thousands of years, and they will continue to have fire in them in the future. And we can't always put the fires out. We have to decide what kind of fires to live with, and that is why we need to work with these fire crews from around the country. We also need a public who understands the importance of fire on the landscape. A healthy forest, you see, is a forest that lives with fire.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back, and looking at the sea ice edge, we begin from the other day, and we can see a little shift slightly toward the south and a bit eastward. Overall, though, we're going to have another stronger front lifting out of the North Pacific across the lower Bering, and it's tracking off toward the north-northeast, so that ice may shift a little northward here as we head through Sunday and early next week. Looking at the southeast panhandle, winds will be out of the northwest more or less there. 15-20 knots. There could be some stronger gusts, 35 knots out of the northeast at Petersburg. Otherwise, waves, the inner canals 3 to 4 feet, and along the Gulf Coast, offshore flow around 15 knots with some colder air in place, waves 6-7 feet. On Monday, winds will be mainly north-northwest through the inner channels, 10 to 15 knots, waves 2 to 3 feet, and along the Gulf Coast, we'll see westerly winds west of Yakutat turning northwesterly along the outer coast of the Panhandle, 25 to 30 knots, waves 8 to as high as maybe 10-11 feet. In the northwest Gulf, we see winds out of the west off the Kenai, 15 knots, waves 6 feet. In Prince William Sound, west winds with 2-foot waves, and lower Cook Inlet at the mouth there, 15 knots from the northwest and 3-foot waves. On Monday, winds will continue out of the southwest, generally speaking, there in the northwest Gulf at 20 knots. A bit more variable, 10 knots or so in Prince William Sound with 2-foot waves, and then northeasterly winds, especially from Anchor Point down through the mouth of Cook Inlet at 20 knots and waves 4 to 5 feet. Across Kodiak Island, winds will be westerly through Shelikof Strait, 15 knots, a bit variable on the east or North Pacific side of the Alaska Peninsula before turning and picking up to 30 knots off of South Point from the southeast in advance of that frontal system. And we expect the winds to begin increasing on Monday as that frontal system works its way northward. We expect winds to be turning from the east there on the north end of Kodiak Island to the south as you get south of Kodiak down through the east side of the Alaska Peninsula. South winds to 30 knots, waves building 13 to as high as 20 feet off of Sand Point, and look for east to southeast winds around 20 knots from iced areas of Bristol Bay to the open waters there north and northwest of Cold Bay. Across the Aleutian chain, we see 40 knot gales to as high as 50 knot storm force winds. Strongest winds will be the central Aleutians west of Atka and Adak. and look for winds circulating around that stronger area of low pressure. Waves building in excess of 20 feet from the central Aleutians into the western Aleutians. On Monday, winds will be primarily from the south-southeast across the eastern and southern Aleutians, around 30 knots, though increasing upwards to 35 knot to 40 knot gales as the low pressure center is just southwest of Kiska on Monday. And then across the west, the ice-covered areas, the winds continue out of the northwest and even northeast at around 20 knots or so. So the ice is going to try to drift a little further south and maybe a tad westward on Sunday, but with that front approaching from the south, that will slow at least the southward progress of the ice. And we do expect winds to be picking up 30 knots or so along the west-southwest coast, the Kuskokwim and Yukon deltas, and as high as 45 knots from the northeast there at St. Matthew. Across the Arctic coast, winds will be out of the west-southwest around 10 knots, turning more northwesterly through the lower Chukchi Sea at 10 to 20 knots, and then northwesterly through the Bering Strait and on the north side of St. Lawrence Island. And then going into Monday, the Arctic coast will see winds out of the generally west 15 to 20 knots, and also along the northwest coast there at Point Lay. And as we drop on down through the lower Chukchi Sea and through the Bering Strait, winds again will turn kind of more to the northeast and accelerate to 30 knots on the north side of St. Lawrence Island. And a quick check of the weather maps. Early Sunday morning, low pressure just south of the Central Gulf North Pacific interface, a weakening trough that has some light precipitation, mainly some light snow along and north of the Alaska Range. And then on Sunday, that weak low just southwest of Haida Gwaii with some rain just clipping the far south end of the Panhandle Sunday night into Monday. The stronger low southwest of the central Aleutians down to 945, and by Monday that frontal system will be lifting northward across the Aleutians and approaching the southwest coast as warmer air will trigger areas of lighter snow across much of the southwest interior. Well, that's all the time I have. Thank you for watching the show, and join me again tomorrow night.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.